This is Metal Mike, and in this episode of the 80's Glam Metalcast, I'm joined by Rob Wylde from Midnite City, and together we put the 8 and 80's Kiss plus Revenge by doing a non-makeup Kiss album ranking. Not only do we rank the albums from 83 to 92, but we talk the tours, the videos, and the images the band tried during this time. Make sure you watch the screen as the album rankings start. There's so many cool pictures that pop up. And look in the description for links to all that Midnite City has going on. Check it out. It's only right now. Rob, welcome back to the 80's Glam Metalcast, man. Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you doing? Happy New Year to you.
Oh, man, I'm doing awesome. Well, hey, we survived 2020, so let's think positive thoughts here for 2021.
Oh, let's hope so, mate. Let's hope so. It can't be any worse, can it? So, yeah, things can only get better, mate, you know?
Yes, I agree with you. So we had been talking online, and I had done a few podcasts that were Kiss-themed, but they mostly focused on the makeup era of Kiss. And you kind of gave me the idea of why don't we do one of the non-makeup era? So that's our plan for this podcast. We're just going to go through all the albums, the tours, the different looks, the different hairstyles, the videos, and just have a lot of fun with 80's Kiss. Does that sound like a plan?
Oh, that sounds awesome, mate. That sounds awesome. Let's do it.
Well, hey, before we jump in, why don't you get us up to speed with what's going on with Midnite City?
Well, actually, things are actually starting to pick up again. Our new album, the pre-sales for our new album, Itch Can't Scratch, start on January 15th. So that's just a couple of weeks away. So I can't give away the actual release date at the minute, but you'll find out the exact release date on January 15th. But there's going to be a lot of really cool pre-order stuff going up. There's going to be different bundles available, the CD, an album T-shirt. The album's actually going to be coming out on red and silver vinyl as well. And there's a lot of cool stuff happening. So that's happening January 15th with our new record label, Roulette Media. And also the week after that, January the 22nd, is the release of our first single and first video off the new album. So the video's done, looks absolutely killer. That's going to be coming out January 22nd. And then we've got another 3 videos actually coming out before the album comes out. So lots of stuff happening. We also have shows booked from sort of May onwards next year, which we're hoping will happen. So we're keeping everything crossed that those shows will happen. But yeah, it's all exciting. We're all ready to go, and we can't wait for everybody to hear our new album.
Awesome, man. I'm excited for it. I can't wait. So let's do a couple icebreakers before we jump right in. What's the first Kiss album you ever bought?
Crazy Nights.
Crazy Nights. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm Asylum. Yeah. I'm the one before, so right around the same time, so pretty similar. Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of how I discovered Kiss was really through because I was 10 when Crazy Nights came out. So bearing in mind, obviously, growing up in England, very different to growing up in the States, and we didn't have MTV and all that kind of stuff. So the only bands that I was really sort of aware of were bands that were having chart success here in the UK, which were for the most part the big bands, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard. And Kiss, unbelievably, I mean, I know that the Crazy Nights album and the Crazy Nights single wasn't that big in the States, but in the UK, the single actually got to number 4 in the singles charts, which was sort of like unheard of for a rock band. So, and the album did great. I think the album was number 4 as well. So it was a big hit over here. So that was my sort of introduction to Kiss, because I'd never heard of them before. I didn't know anything about the makeup or anything. When I heard Crazy Nights and I saw the video, I kind of thought, they kind of look like an older version of Bon Jovi, and it kind of sounded like Bon Jovi, which was kind of like, what that album was. So to me, it was just kind of like another cool band that kind of sounds like Bon Jovi. And it wasn't until I kind of dug a little bit deeper and found out about this huge history of the band and, the makeup and everything. And that was it. But yeah, Crazy Nights is my first album.
It's funny because I actually knew about Kiss back in the early days, even though I didn't really know that I didn't understand that they were musicians. I had a aunt that lived in our house with us, and she was big into the Bee Gees, and she was big into Kiss, and she'd show me all these pictures of Gene and Paul, the whole band, and I just thought they were superheroes. I was probably only 4 years old at the time when she lived with us, so I didn't really I don't know if I ever heard any of their music or understood that they were musicians, but that was the first time I knew who Kiss were. But then later on, like I said, I think 1986, I bought Asylum on cassette used, and I think also at that time that's when we got MTV, and I think the first video I saw was Tears Are Falling. So your first video was Crazy Nights that you saw.
Yeah, it was Crazy Nights, and then Reason to Live was next. That charted in the UK as well. I didn't do as well as Crazy Nights, but that still charted, I think, like top 30 in the UK. And so after hearing those two, I went out and bought Crazy Nights on cassette. And it was really funny, actually, because I had an older neighbor who used to live close by, and he was like a good 5 or 6 years older than me, and he was a big rock fan. He was into, Kiss and Wasp and Dokken and all that kind of stuff. And when he heard that I was listening to Crazy Nights, he freaked out, and he's like, that's not the real Kiss. You got to listen to this. And he loaned me Alive 2 on vinyl,
wow.
The gatefold sleeve. And of course, like a million kids, I was a little bit late for the party, but like a million kids, I opened that vinyl and it was just like, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah.
So that was when I then started getting into, he would loan me albums and like the 70s stuff. And even though my introduction was the 80s, and I still like, I like 80s Kiss just as much as 70s Kiss, probably a little bit more really, but it was through him that I kind of delved back and started, I had something like 15 albums to buy, to backtrack from Crazy Nights, but yeah, it was the same thing, I didn't, when I first heard Crazy Nights, to me it was just another rock band. I didn't know about the Star Child and the Demon and the whole the stage show and everything, which was so fascinating when you discover that for the first time. It's like Star Wars, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, because I think with all of us, I talked to some guys the other night, I did a podcast, and they kind of said, how did you get into this music, or how did this all start? And it was weird, and you could probably relate, because we've talked about toys and stuff. I mean, you figure when I'm in, we're 8, 9 years old, all the 80s toys, Star Wars, Thundercats, He-Man, G.I. Joe, it's all characters, right? So then once you get into music and you see these guys, even, you can look at Motley Crue, Blackie Lawless, Alice Cooper, they're all characters. But when you discover Kiss, it's like, holy shit, man, these are like alive superheroes here that you can get into. So it's like everything that you're into kind of morphed into one thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's like a big reason why a lot of little boys are into Kiss, because of that. Not only the music, but like you're saying, your superhero characters, and because I had all those, I was a massive collector of all the Star Wars stuff, and then the He-Man stuff, and it was kind of like you say, an extension of that, but also with this incredible music as well. So it was a win-win.
No doubt. Well, we've got to discuss these albums, and we've got to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly, just like Paul Stanley says, right? And we know there's a little bit of that on every album. So we got to start. They take the makeup off, 1983, Lick It Up. Why don't you go first? Give your rating out of the 6 albums that we're going to talk about, and what you think, what's the highs and the lows of this album?
Right. Well, you're going to be surprised by this. It's going to get better, but this is ranked as number 5. Lick It Up. It's weird because like I said, when I bought Crazy Nights, and then I think the next album I bought after that was Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, which came out in '88. Yep. And then I got after my friend loaned me Alive 2, I bought that on cassette, and then I would sort of backtrack and kind of. But I did do it in any order. So like one year, for my birthday and Christmas every year, I'll get a different cassette. So it might be Rock and Roll Over, and then it might be Animalized, and it might be the first album, then it might be, Unmasked or whatever. So I didn't really buy them in any order, but I remember getting Lick It Up probably around maybe 88, 89. So not long after I discovered the Crazy Nights album. I thought it was okay. I think, for me, there's a couple of really standout songs on the album, but I wasn't I wasn't blown away by it, and it's kind of one of those albums that still today is kind of. I actually listened to it not long ago, and it kind of. I don't know. There's some good songs on it. It's not my favorite non-makeup Kiss album, but you know, it was quite an even album. You know, in terms of the Paul and Gene songs, and you know, some of the Gene stuff is pretty good on this album, which we can't really be. That can't really be said for a lot of the stuff that will follow on further albums. But to me, I mean, A Million to One is the standout track of the album by a long way. And I really like Lick It Up, the song. I think it's a great kind of 80s Kiss anthem that's still in the set list today. But yeah, it's not one of my. It wouldn't rank as one of my favorites. How about you?
You know, I'm not ranking it very high either. I rank it at 4. I've never been head over heels over this album. I think I like it more as time goes on, but something about it just has a weird vibe. It doesn't really feel like Kiss to me. I don't know, something about it. And I think the problem is and you kind of touched on this a little bit as well. It's kind of metal, you know, it's a little bit more metallic than Kiss usually does. And I think when Kiss does that, Paul kind of suffers. I don't think Paul thrives in the metal environment, but Gene does. And that's what you said. I think Gene songs kick ass. I like Gene songs a lot. I love Not for the Innocent, On the Eighth Day, Dance All Over Your Face. Those are really cool songs. And Lick It Up as well. I think that is the only song that kind of feels like it could be a classic Kiss song. You know what I mean? Like it's got pop sensibility and classic rock kind of written all over it. But the rest of the songs, but what I will say, compared to some of the other albums, it has, I mean, the songs are good. There's a lot of good songs. You can't go through and say, oh, that song's horrible. I don't think there's horrible songs. They just don't all feel very Kiss to me. And I think that's Vinnie Vincent's influence. He's a great writer, but I think he brings an element that's kind of non-Kiss in some respects. So that's my thoughts on it.
I agree. I agree with that. I think, you know, it was kind of, you know, they were coming out of the Creatures album, so the Creatures album, which I love, by the way.
I love that too.
Yeah, that was quite a metal sounding album as well. So they kind of went over, they carried that theme on into Lick It Up, but the whole Vinnie Vincent thing, like again, that's another whole other conversation. But like I was never, you know, you have these Kiss fans that constantly say, you know, he saved Kiss and all this, and I just never bought into him at all. I thought he was a good guitar player. He really overplayed everything.
Yep.
And it's kind of, I don't know, I've just never really bought into, you know, even, you know, his solo stuff, you know, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion albums. I have both of those, and I hated both of them. I was never really a big fan of him. I thought he was completely the wrong choice for Kiss, and I get why they got him in, because it was, you know, it was the early 80s, so they were kind of trying to compete with, you know, Eddie Van Halen and all those guitar players, so they kind of needed that fast shredder guy. But I just think he was totally wrong for Kiss, and like you said, I think he's a big part of the Lick It Up album. You know, I think he co-wrote about, I think it's like 8 of the 10 songs on this album. So
he did. Yep.
He's a massive. So you're buying on with the fact that, you know, it doesn't sound like a Kiss album, because, you know, it kind of is more like a Vinnie Vincent thing with, you know, Gene and Paul. That's kind of how it sounds to me. But I actually think, like you said, I think the Gene stuff is, which, like I said, I'll never say this about any of the Kiss albums, but I think the Gene stuff is probably slightly better than the Paul stuff on this album.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're bang on with that analogy there.
Yeah, man. See, you and I, that's why we have these good conversations. We're on the same wavelength here.
Yeah, that's it, man.
All right, so Animalize. What do you got? What do you got for Animalize?
Animalize for me comes in at number 4.
Okay.
So this album, when it first came out, like I said, I didn't actually have it when it came out, but I got this sort of fairly into my sort of discovery of Kiss, and I wasn't over keen on this album either. But over the years, I've really grown to like this album a lot. Apart from, there's a couple of songs, you know what I'm going to say, but one's obviously Burn, Bitch, Burn, but the other one is possibly, without doubt, not only Gene's worst song, Kiss's worst song, but possibly the worst song of all time is Lonely as a Hunter. I don't know what is going on there. And you have to question, you know, if that's, you know, how bad were the other songs that he brought to the table, if that was one of the ones used on the album. you got to question those.
Yep.
But apart from those two Gene songs, the other two, Murder in High Heels and While the City Sleeps, I think are cool Gene songs. And I love everything on this from Paul.
Yeah.
I think, this is one of those albums where he was, I think it was around this time when Gene started going off and doing the Hollywood thing and doing movies. And by all accounts, this was pretty much, a Paul Stanley solo album, really, with very little input from Gene. I think everything that Paul does on this is great. Thrills in the Night, my standout song on this album, but everything, I think, Get All You Can Take is great. Heaven's on Fire is another massive sort of Kiss 80s anthem.
Yep.
And it's really grown on me over the years. At the time when I first bought it, I wasn't all that keen on it, but I much prefer this to Lick It Up. Even though it is still quite, it's still quite metal in places, but I think the songs are better on. I think Paul was just back on the map on this album. But again, that was because possibly because Vinny wasn't involved with it. Vinny had gone, and you had Mark St. John coming in to play guitar. So again, it was a different sort of dynamic in the band, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much close to you. I'm rating it as 5 out of the 6. And once again, there's some really good high points. Like I said, Paul, you're right. Paul's stuff is great. I mean, Heaven's on Fire is a played out song, but I realize that it's a good hit. It's a hit song. And Thrills in the Night, obviously, too, is probably one of my favorites. But, you're spot on. The Gene stuff's terrible. And actually, I picked 2 other songs that I can't really stand as the final songs. I hate those 2 songs. While the City Sleeps and Murder in High Heels, I just think they're just throwaway, stupid songs. And, I think the problem with this album, there's a couple problems. Obviously, still, like I said, they're still holding on to some of that metallic stuff, and they're not fully embracing more like the rock sound, which they need to get to. But they suffer from not having a real producer. I think Paul, he's a good producer, but I think you needed somebody who was going to really veto a lot of this crap that found its way on there. But all in all, they're getting more comfortable as being 80s Kiss at this point, so it's a good in the step of their evolution. But yeah, overall, just too many dud songs on there.
Yeah. Like I said, I prefer it to Lick It Up, but it's a grower for me. It's always it's grown on me over the years. I think another reason why I like it as well is because it was around the time when I got years later, obviously, but I got the live uncensored, the VHS,
that rules,
which was obviously on the this is the Animalized tour, so I think that's kind of why I've got a little bit of a soft spot for it as well. So there's probably a bit of that in there as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Like, I love that concert. I think that's amazing. All the stage raps and the high-speed versions of the songs. And you're right. Sometimes those live tours dictate how you feel about the album. Yeah, and that'll come up for me a little bit later. But yeah, for sure. Okay, so Asylum. What are your thoughts on Asylum?
Right. So Asylum for me is coming in at number 2. I really liked, and I still really like Asylum. I think this is kind of like they changed again, I think, a little bit style, obviously image-wise in a big way, but even musically, I think this was sort of like the first kind of venture into trying to do the whole 80s hair metal thing. Yeah. Whereas kind of like Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up are very similar in the kind of the metallic sort of metal approach to what they were doing. Kind of Animalized is sort of got a foot in either category, and I think Asylum is, before they went full on pop metal for Crazy Nights, this was kind of almost like dipping their toe in it and checking the water out. And I absolutely love this album. I loved it when I bought it, and I still love it. I think I actually love every song on this album. I think even the Gene stuff's great on this. Whereas he seemed, I'm sure that, this was 85 when Asylum came out, so Gene was still doing his movies and he was still doing the Hollywood thing, but he seems, even though I don't think he was fully back into doing the Kiss thing, but he seems a bit more focused on this album than he did on Animalized, where, his stuff on Animalized seems like phoned in. Whereas on this album, I actually like, pretty much all the Gene stuff. And again, Paul just absolutely killing it with, King of the Mountain and Tears Are Falling. All Night, I think, is cheesiest song ever, but what an anthem that was.
Yep.
It was a full-on kind of, almost like a rock and roll all night for the 80s sort of thing. And so I was a big fan of this album, still am. Again, I think you touched on it on the last one, that I think it probably could have used a good producer. I don't think the overall kind of sound of the album's all that great, but I think the songs are really, really cool. And I'm one of the only people that thought that the image thing was also really cool. It was so over the top and so sort of like Vegas and colourful, and yes, Gene looked ridiculous, but there was just something about it that I absolutely loved. That whole thing they were doing, I thought was great. So I'm not only a fan of this album, but I'm a fan of the tour and just everything about Asylum. I think it's really, really cool. I love it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, this was the first Kiss album I ever bought, so obviously I'm very biased. This could have been number one. If we were just doing 80s albums, this would be number one. So I think I just put a spoiler out there. But so I've got Asylum at 2, just like you. I think Kiss seem more comfortable in their skin, and I feel like there's elements of the 70s Kiss, and you touched on that too, like Rock and Roll Night, and I feel, with All Night, I feel like there's elements of 70s Kiss working their way into 80s Kiss on this album, and that's a good thing. I mean, you can't shut out your past, you know what I mean? So I feel like there's a little bit of that 70s vibe that's kind of filtered in there here and there. You're right, Gene songs are 100% better. Probably one of my favorite Gene songs out of any of the 80s albums is Trial by Fire. I can't believe they didn't release that song. I think that song is such a cool anthem. And Paul's singles are gold. I mean, this, you can see, as from Animalized to here, he knows how to write a hit song. And I mean, Tears Are Falling is incredible. Who Wants to Be Lonely? Like I said, I know All Night is cheesy, but I just like that song. It's wicked catchy, and like I said, it reminds me of 70s Kiss in the 80s, kind of. So it's cool. Even stuff like King of the Mountain, the solos too. What an improvement! And we didn't touch much on Mark St. John, but I've never been huge into Mark St. John, and Bruce Kulick was just like a breath of fresh air. Way better guitar player.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Asylum's obviously the first album that Bruce played on, apart from doing, I think he did a couple of solos on Animalized, but this is the first album that he played on the whole thing. And I always thought that I mean, you can't beat Ace for 70s Kiss. No one's ever gonna. Nope. He's just classic. The solos are so simple, but they're so memorable. But as in terms of 80s Kiss, Bruce was just the absolute perfect choice, because he could shred and he could do all the guitar heroics and all the whammy bar stuff when he needed to, but also he could do really sweet melodic guitar solos, like the Tears Are Falling solos, incredible, So he was one of those guys that, and they're quite hard to find, especially in lead guitar players, especially for that genre of music where they know sort of when to play and when not to play, whereas Vinnie Vincent was the exact opposite. I think every time a solo came up, it was like, okay, now it's time. Forget about the song. It's about how fast I can play and look at how many notes I can play, which is just kind of, after a while, it just gets really boring, So whereas Bruce had that great kind of best of both worlds where he could do all the fast shredding stuff, but he also knew when to rein it in as well. And I just felt for his character as well, he didn't really try and overshadow, Paul and Gene. And he kind of, I think he just knew where his place was in the band. And I thought Bruce was a perfect guitar player for Kiss. And one of the reasons why I think this Asylum album is so good is because it's a lot to do with Bruce. Who I think Bruce actually co-wrote quite a few songs on this as well. So I think he was a big part of this album,
Yeah, and one person, we haven't mentioned, which we should, is Eric Carr. I mean, obviously Eric Carr has done some killer drums on all the 80s Kiss albums. But I'm going to go out there and say this is probably his last great performance on a Kiss album, in my opinion. I feel, and it's not his fault, it's just the material. I think as the material gets simpler, he didn't really get to do all those crazy fills and those huge things that he does. So I'd say right here is probably the last time we saw like really crazy killer drums from Eric Carr.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he was kind of, as the album sort of progressed and they kind of got more, like you said, the pop metal sound is a much more simpler sound. So, Eric was doing more of his kind of drum heroics on kind of like the Animalized album, and like I said, they kind of went onto this album as well. And his drum solo on this tour was incredible. That was when he first started using the Simmons pads and the synthesizers and stuff during his drum solo. I've got like a load of bootlegs from this tour, and his drum solo on the Asylum tour was just insanely good. So yeah, can't forget Eric.
Welcome to the Gene Simmons Wigs Halftime Show. Hey man, we're halfway, and I think it'd be a perfect time to take a break and talk about the interesting hairdos, wigs, and all the crazy stuff, at least that Paul and Gene were wearing throughout this era. So, I'm saying, for the most part, I think Lick It Up is probably the last time we saw Gene's real hair for the most part. Do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you look at the Lick It Up video, that's definitely his hair, I think. And I think it was around that time. I think it was it was 84 when he did the Runaway movie, wasn't it? So that was when he completely cut his hair off, and he was wearing the really awful wig during the Animalized Live Uncensored.
Well, you know what? I don't know, man. I think he looks cool in that video. I don't know. Probably because, once again, I was just a young kid and I saw that, and that was probably like the first Kiss concert like on video that I ever saw. So to me, I know the wig is bad, but I think he looks cool. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, his outfit was quite cool because they kind of, around that time, around the Animalized tour, they were kind of doing that whole, obviously they had all the animal print and stuff. It was kind of very macho sort of look, wasn't it? It was almost at times bordering on like the Manowar kind of thing, with just like the leopard print and the zebra print and everything. And I think Gene's outfit was cool. Like, it was just his
wig is it's kind of weird.
Bad. I suppose when you look at how his hair looks in the Runaway video, there's no way he could have. The Runaway movie. There's no way he could have gone on stage looking like that. So, he did his best, bless him,
Well, oddly enough, this is what kind of perplexes me about the whole thing, is there's times where I think you see his real hair, and there's times where he's wearing a wig. Because if you fast forward to the Tears Are Falling video, his hair looks very similar than it did at Lick It Up. He has no bangs. But then when you get to the Who Wants to Be Lonely video, he has giant hair, he has giant bangs. It's not even the same kind of, texture of his hair that you're used to seeing, so you can tell it's a wig. It was kind of odd when he chose to wear one and when he chose not to wear one. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, you bang on, because it's kind of, you would think he would be kind of trying to be consistent. Either, okay, I'm going to wear a wig for all of these videos, or I'm not going to wear a wig for any of them. It was like you say, he's almost like maybe he just showed up and, he opened his flight case and his wig wasn't in there or something. And it was like, well, we got to shoot this video. Let's just go with it,
Yeah, it's weird because there's a lot. If you go through YouTube, and obviously now, and I think why we think of this and know about it now is because everything's documented, right? You can Google every year of Gene Simmons. You can see what he looked like every year of his life. You can go on YouTube and watch interviews of every year. And when you do that, you're seeing that, he's got no bangs. He's got no hair basically on the top, or he's got a giant hair on the top. So, that's when you kind of see these differences. And a lot of those interview shows they did, they went on like Oprah, and they went on all these crazy shows in like 86, 87. And a lot of times he didn't wear the wig. He just had the no bangs type look.
Yeah, it was very, very inconsistent, really, wasn't it? So maybe he just thought nobody would notice, Obviously, right. he wouldn't have been aware of the birth of the internet at that point. So.
That's right.
If he had, maybe he would have rethought his strategy a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you think about Paul, once again, I think we were seeing his real hair probably, I don't know. What do you think? I want to say Lick It Up, Animalize, maybe Asylum, but then I think after that point, I think we're seeing some additions to his hair. What do you think? Like some plugs or some, clip-on hair?
Yeah,
or something?
he was. Crazy Nights. I think for the most part in the videos that was his hair.
Okay.
And he certainly. I've got a DVD of Kiss in Japan in '88, and that's definitely his hair because he's kind of like there's not a great deal going on there, especially when he starts getting hot, and then kind of almost sort of overnight I saw some other live videos and interviews where he's definitely got like extensions in, so he's wearing sort of it's his hair, but the kind of it's a lot longer and there's a lot more hair on his head, so I think he started sort of wearing the extension thing around the Crazy Nights tour, and then definitely on Hot in the Shade and Revenge. But yeah, and back to the Gene thing, I think Crazy Nights, he was obviously definitely wearing a wig again.
Oh, that's a strange
one.
But
then when he got onto the Hot in the Shade tour, I think again that's Gene's real hair at that point. So I think, but that was probably because he'd stopped doing all the movies and stuff, So I think, but in as far as Paul goes, I think probably halfway through the Crazy Nights tour, he started to wear the extensions, I think. Yeah.
Well, this is an interesting question now, and then we'll jump back into the albums after this one. What if you had, out of all these albums, what do you think their best look was?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a tough one because I absolutely love the Asylum look. I mean, Gene did look absolutely ridiculous,
yes.
But there was just something, we've talked before. I'm such a big Glam fan and Poison and all those bands, and I was so into that look, and I just thought it was just so colourful and something great to look at as well as the music. So I really like the Asylum look. Crazy Nights was kind of a little bit toned down from that. I always thought Gene looked good during the Crazy Nights tour.
Pretty much just wore leather.
Yeah, he was going to just black leather and the kind of the leather pants and the leather kind of cut off jackets and stuff. Paul looked a little bit odd during that period because he was wearing those kind of weird, almost like multicolored tights and then those kind of moon boots that he used to wear and with the bicycle reflectors. I always thought Paul looked a little bit odd during the Crazy Night.
But we all wanted those moon boots at the time,
Oh, of course, I wanted some. I absolutely wanted some. It will be the Asylum look, which for me is a full-on like hair metal glam fan. I'm going to go with Asylum.
Nice.
How about you?
I was thinking about Revenge, but a lot of people made some comments, and I kind of agree with them. They're like, Kiss is trying really hard to look like tough guys. And they're not really tough guys at this point. They're like rich guys. So I'm going to go with like the live Hot in the Shade look. I think that was the most just kind of, I know it's in the middle. It's not really outrageous, but I just think they look cool. Like you can look back, and here's why I like it. You can go back and look at that tour book, and if you saw somebody wearing some of that stuff today, you'd be like, yeah, that's doable. And where even though Asylum, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, it's so outrageous. I mean, if you saw somebody out today or a band wearing that shit, you'd be like, it'd be questionable. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go with that Hot in the Shade tour look. I think that's their best.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this is where I think this final half here, I think this is where we're going to butt heads, at least on a couple. But I think I already know where you rank Crazy Nights, but go ahead. Tell everybody.
Yeah, you know it, mate. Yeah, it's coming in number one for me. Yeah, it's. But I think there's a few reasons for this. I think everybody's first Kiss album is you always kind of that's always going to be one of your favorites, if not your favorite. With the album that introduced you to the band, which for me was Crazy Night. So, but also for me, I've always been really into keyboards. I loved, I loved the early Bon Jovi stuff and, bands like Danger, and I was always big into keyboards. So, obviously there's an absolute ton of keyboards on this album. And obviously, Desmond Child's involved, who's my favorite songwriter of all time. And there's Diane Warren involved. And to me, it was just, obviously it was completely Kiss selling out. There is absolutely no two ways about that. There's no argument about it. But in a way, you can kind of see why they did this, because, you know, you look at all the bands who they inspired, you know, whether it be, you know, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Poison, all these bands who were clearly influenced by Kiss, not just in the sound, but also the stage show and everything. And all these bands just completely took over Kiss, and whereas Kiss was selling, you know, going gold for the most part, or maybe having a platinum album, you know, you've got like Def Leppard selling like 12 million, and Bon Jovi doing that, even Poison selling like 6 million copies for Open Up and Say Ah, and Kiss is just trailing so far behind it. So, you know, you can kind of see the reasoning. I was thinking, okay, well, we've got to, you know, compete with these guys. So we've got to kind of, you know, try and sound like these guys, which is, you know, what they did. And also, you know, getting Ron Nevison involved to produce it, who'd obviously completely rejuvenated Heart's career, you know, which was obviously another band from the 70s, you know, and who were pretty much over and done with. And then he got involved and did that massive Heart album in '85, and they became this massive band. And, you know, he did a really good album for Ozzy and got Ozzy his first sort of kind of hit, kind of single sort of thing, was Shot in the Dark. So it was a totally calculated move on Kiss's part, but, you know, you can see why they did it. And I personally think that they did a really good job of it. You know, and I know it's one of those albums that I know a lot of Kiss fans absolutely hate, but I just thought they did it really, really well. So, yeah, I can't say enough good things about this album. I love it, you know.
All right. Are you ready for my number?
Go on.
All right, man. So I put it at 6. No, but let me start with the positives. I think Turn on the Night is the best song on the album. I love Turn on the Night. Reason to Live is a great song. I even think Gene's got some good ones on here. I think Good Girl Gone Bad, Thief in the Night, Hell or High Water. Those are good songs. So let me start with some of the negatives. I don't like Gene's voice on this album. I think they've kind of neutered him. He doesn't have the Demon's voice. When I was a kid, I almost questioned if this was Bruce Kulick or somebody else doing the vocals, because it didn't really sound like Gene to me. And so me being a huge Gene fan, and I like the Demon character, I feel like Gene does not work well in this environment. And I think some of the Paul songs, I just hate to say it, they're just ridiculous. Like Bang Bang You, I can't stand that song. And I don't really like My Way. I don't like the keyboards. The sound is very thin. And what's weird is that I like Unmasked, and Unmasked has a very thin sound. So I don't want to judge Crazy Nights unfairly. Like, how could I like Unmasked and not like Crazy Nights that much? But I don't know, man. It's like I like parts of Crazy Nights, but as a whole, I just think with some of weak songs and the thin production and the keyboards and the non-demon voice, it's like if you mix everything together, it just kind of falls flat for me. So I'm sorry, man. This was like my second Kiss album that I bought. This was the first one I bought when it was released, and I think I didn't mind it at the time. But even as a kid, I remember not being really enthused about the song Crazy Nights. I thought that was kind of a cheesy song. So I don't know. For some reason, even as a kid, this album didn't really, you know, register with me for some reason, but I do like parts of it. So can we still be friends?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Of course. Yeah, it's funny you were saying about the sound as well. What's really funny is if you listen to other albums that Ron Nevison produced around this time, they all sound exactly the same.
Yeah. Yep.
Like if you put Crazy Nights on and you put Ultimate Sin, Ozzy Osbourne on, it's literally the same drum sound. It's the same guitar sound. You know, even the Europe album that he did, the Out of This World album, he just has a sound. So, you know, when he was working with, you know, rock bands, he would just have a go-to drum sound, a go-to guitar sound, and on all his albums kind of sound. So if you love that sound, you'll love all those albums. But if you don't, which I can totally see why, because it was a totally watered down, you know. But at the end of the day, it was, you know, they were trying to go for hit singles. You know, they were trying to get on the radio and you know, so he was going for that kind of safe sort of, you know, non-threatening, you know, sound, I guess. So, yeah, it didn't really work out for him, did it?
No.
They kind of waited for 2 years to work with him, and he didn't really. I mean, the biggest hit was, like I said, over here in the UK. I think he went platinum. I think it was an improvement on Asylum, but
yeah,
I think they were kind of really expecting. I've got to say, I think Reason to Live should have been you know, if he'd given that song to Heart,
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been a number one song, you know. And I think that if that song would have been a hit, then I think the album probably would have, like most bands did, you know, you have a big ballad, then that's what blows your album up and sells the, you know, the copies. But yeah, unfortunately, it didn't really happen for them, did it? I think a lot of people just couldn't get their head around Kiss selling out to kind of the Bon Jovi sound, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, mixed opinions there, mate.
Definitely. It was bound to happen. We were spot on with most of the other ones. All right, so I think we've got to come to some kind of common ground maybe on this one. Hot in the Shade. What do you got for your rating?
I'm coming in at number 3 with Hot in the Shade.
Okay.
This one, number 3 for me. This one I got straight after Smashes, Thrashes and Hits, so this is an early Kiss album for me. And I remember as a kid thinking, I don't like it as much as Crazy Nights, but I really liked it nonetheless. And I still think that today. You know, I think there was way too many songs on the album.
Yeah.
Which I think everybody says, you know, 15 songs was, I think they could have done a really good 12 track album, got rid of a couple of the Gene songs, even though I think there's some really good Gene stuff on this. And I think this is one of the albums where he kind of like got back on board with the Kiss thing, because I was actually looking at this the other day, that there's an equal amount of Paul and Gene songs on this. I think there's 7 Paul, 7 Gene, and then there's the Eric Carr song. But I like this album. You know, it's a much more kind of back to basic sound again.
Yep.
You know, they didn't use a producer. So I guess they were thinking, well, you know, we tried the big hit producer, it didn't work. So why would we spend all that money on Bob Rock or whatever? If it didn't work with Crazy Nights, it's probably not going to work with this. So they kind of went ahead and just produced it themselves again. And I think the overall sound of the album, I don't think it's as good. You know, they're using drum machines on a few songs here and there. But I think overall it's just more of a straight ahead, you know, kick-ass rock album. I think there's some, you know, I love Silver Spoon. Hide Your Heart's a brilliant song. King of Hearts is great. And there's still, for me, there's still a couple of songs on the album that kind of, even though they're not produced with all the keys and stuff, but there's a couple of songs that do kind of have that Crazy Night sound.
Yeah.
You know, I think Hide Your Heart probably could have made Crazy Nights, and Love Me to Hate You is kind of in that kind of style. But then they're doing stuff like, you know, Rise to It and the Gene stuff on this, I think, is great. You know, Street Givers, Street Takers Away, and there's a lot of cool Gene stuff on this as well. So I really like it. I think this is a really underrated Kiss album. You know, how about you? Where do you rank it?
Yeah, I put it at 3, same as you. And I think that a lot of people can't stand this album. They bag on it on the internet, but I think it's great. I think this is, once again, great singles. 3 great singles. And for here, I don't know how it was over in the UK, but Forever was like, I don't know, top 10, top 20 or something like that. So they had a big song with Forever, and it's a great song. Yeah, Hide Your Heart. I just think the singles are awesome. And you're right, there's a little too many songs. There's the drum machine thing I'm not a big fan of. But this album overall has more balls than Crazy Nights. It's, like you said, it's a straight-up rock album. And I think, once again, even Gene's songs, Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell, Street Giveth, Street Taketh Away, Prisoner of Love, I like all those songs. And I must say, this was the first time I ever saw Kiss, was for this tour. So kind of what we were talking about before, there's sometimes the tour gives you a different vibe about the album. And I mean, the tour had the freaking Sphinx on the stage, and he was shooting lasers out of his mouth and his eyes, and he was blowing smoke out of his nose. I mean, it was so cool, man. I mean, I love that concert, and I love this album. So it's all kind of one and the same for me. So I give it a 3.
Yeah, I'd love to say. I mean, that the Hot in the Shade tour never. I don't think the Hot in the Shade tour ever left the States. I think it certainly never came to Europe. But what was funny about the Hot in the Shade tour is that I think the album came out I think it was October '89, and I don't think the tour started till I think the following May, because the album was bombing. You know, it wasn't doing anything, and then you had the big. It wasn't a hit. It wasn't a hit in England. It didn't do anything. But I know you guys, like you said, he had the big hit with Forever, which then sort of, you know, gave him a massive hit, and that's when he went out on tour. And I remember seeing, all the amazing, because they used to have like two really cool support bands with them, didn't they? Whether it was Winger or Danger or Faster Pussycat and all these. It was a good lineup, wasn't it? Kind of Kiss plus two really good opening acts, and I've got a lot of DVDs from this tour, and it looks incredible. The whole Leon, the Sphinx thing, and man, and I think as well, just the set list on that tour was incredible.
Yes,
the ultimate kind of Kiss set list, really, on the Hot in the Shade tour.
Yeah, you're spot on, because I'll never forget. One of my best friends and I were so hyped to see Kiss for this tour, and then they had initially said they weren't going to tour for this album, and like you said, it could be because of the sales or whatever. And I remember we were so mad. I think we wanted to write a letter to Kiss or something and blast them. I don't think we ever did. If we would have had Twitter, we could have blasted them immediately and they could have seen it. But I remember being really upset about it. But thank God the tour did happen. And when I saw them, it was Little Caesar and Slaughter, and we actually met Little Caesar. We were poking around back, where the buses were. We were trying to meet Kiss, but we did meet Little Caesar, and they were very cool. But once again, first Kiss concert, and I think, and you could probably relate to this, at the time, okay, when we're in the 80s and the early 90s, we were kind of thinking like, this is pretty cool, but, it's not as cool as maybe the 70s or the 60s were. But now, all these years later, and you see these young kids, there's young kids that would have killed to see Kiss in the 80s, or there's young kids that are obsessed with all this 80s music. We grew up in a killer time, man. One of the best eras of music, one of the best movements in music. You didn't realize that at the time, though, but it's really amazing.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree with you. I was slightly kind of not quite as fortunate as you, because, in the UK, it was very different story to how it was in the States. So I would have to live vicariously through Metal Edge magazine. So I would be, I'm reading about all this stuff going on in America. Whereas in the UK, we would only really get the really big bands, that would, say Bon Jovi would come over, Motley Crue. Kiss, came over, many times, but like I said, they didn't come over. They came over on the Crazy Nights tour. But that was really, they were playing like 3,000 seat halls. They were playing really small places, and then they completely missed the UK, and then came back on the Revenge tour. So, that's of all the tours, the Hot in the Shade tour is the one that I would have liked to have seen the most. So I'm jealous, Mike. I'm jealous.
When did you first see them live?
On the Revenge tour,
okay,
which was because the first time they came to the UK after I kind of discovered them, so it was 87 Crazy Nights tour. So it was I think it was September '88, and I really wanted to go, but my parents wouldn't let me go.
Yeah, we were young, man. We were young at that point.
Yeah, I was 11 years old, so I didn't see the Crazy Nights tour. Like I said, they skipped the Hot in the Shade tour. But by the time the Revenge came around, which was, they actually started the Revenge tour in the UK. They came over in May of '92. I think the Revenge tour didn't start in the States till about October, but they came over and did, I think it was about like 8 shows in the UK with Danger
nice.
Opening for them. So that was my first Kiss show. So, and again, that was an incredible show as well, with the, and what was cool with that was because, over here in the UK, they weren't playing the huge venues that they were playing in the States. They didn't bring the whole Statue of Liberty stage show, so they brought with them kind of like a smaller version of the Hot in the Shade stage show.
Okay.
So they brought they brought Leon. He wasn't quite as impressive as the stuff I've seen in the States. He just kind of sat at the back. He didn't. His mouth didn't open, and he wasn't shooting lasers and stuff. But,
oh shit!
It was still kind of like almost like a kind of a watered down version of the US show, which they actually used for the Revenge tour. So kind of again a little bit of even more useless information.
We're both full of it.
So I kind of saw a little bit of the Hot in the Shade thing, but not like the full thing. But
okay.
So for me it was Revenge. So So again, you saw them like a tour before me. So
okay.
yeah.
Now let's talk about the album. What do you rank Revenge? I already know what you rank. Just say it.
Yeah, we're going to flip flop here. Yep. Revenge is coming in at number 6 for me.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a weird one because I remember buying Revenge the day it came out and just instantly just not really liking it, and it's kind of, you know, I still feel the same way about, you know, some albums kind of over the years sort of grow on you a little bit, but I actually listened to this actually not that long ago because somebody bought me it on vinyl, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it back on and I'm going to listen with an open mind, and maybe, you know, maybe I was wrong, maybe I kind of, you know, misjudged it or whatever, but I still feel the same about it. You know, to me, and it's nothing to do with the fact that obviously, yeah, I'm a big pop metal fan and I like the keyboards and all that stuff. It wasn't the fact that they went heavier and went tougher, because I absolutely love Creatures of the Night. Like, Creatures of the Night is probably, you know, it's definitely in my top 5 Kiss albums. I love Creatures, which is, again, a really tough, heavy, probably heavier than Revenge in a lot of places.
Yep.
But the difference is I really like all the songs on Creatures of the Night. And Revenge, to me, it's just like, it's just riff-tastic. There's, you know, the riffs are great, but there's melodies and hooks for me aren't really there on this one. I think Unholy's brilliant. I mean, it's such a killer Gene song. That was kind of like probably Gene's best song since, you know, even though he didn't write it, but, you know, it was kind of like a God of Thunder, like a new God of Thunder for Gene.
Yep.
And I think Take It Off is an incredible Paul song. But for me, that's it on this album. You know, I just couldn't get into it when I was a kid. Still can't get into it now. And you know, and I know, again, it's when you ask Kiss fans, this is always after Destroyer. This is probably most Kiss fans' favorite album, and I just didn't like the sound of the album. I thought that, like I said, I thought the look was great. You know, I thought Gene looked badass, and, you know, the image thing I thought was great. You know, I really bought into that. But for me, yeah, it's just not melodic enough for me. You know, it's just more of a kind of a riffy album. And I think sometimes when you know, I know, you know, from writing songs myself, that if songs are really riffy, there's usually not that much place for melodies, because it's either one or the other. You know, it's either the songs are a little bit simpler and it's really melodic, or the other way around. So you're doing a lot of riffs and there's not really that much space for kind of like the hooks and the melodies. So I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of where we've kind of got the opposite end of the scale with these two albums, haven't we?
Yeah.
So I'm taking it this is your number one, Mike.
Yeah, this is my number one. If we only did 80s, my number one would have been Asylum. But since we brought this one into the mix, I was kind of opposed to bringing this one into the mix because I wasn't sure where to go with it. But I have to put it at number one, and I'm going to explain why. For me, Gene has always been my favorite member. I love that demon sound and that demon character, and this is Gene's shining moment, man. Unholy is an incredible song. Domino's got a lot of cool attitude. Thou Shalt Not, Spit. I love those songs. I think Gene's totally on target, and you're right. There's a lot of cool riffs. It sounds like a band again playing real music, and I think that's the key part that why Kiss fans like it. It doesn't sound like 70s Kiss. Nobody's going to come in and tell me it sounds like 70s Kiss, but it's got the attitude of 70s Kiss to an extent. You know what I mean? It sounds more raw. It's not overproduced. It's not drum machines. You know what I mean? So that's what I like about it. But I will say this. Paul, for me, like I said before, when he's doing a metallic album or a heavier album, he's out of his element. And I really love Heart of Chrome. But other than that, I don't really like many of the Paul songs. So to me, this is a Gene album, just like I think Creatures of the Night is a Gene album. I think that's, you know, he drives certain albums, and when he does, those are the albums that I gravitate to. And I also think the guitar playing's killer. I think Bruce is totally in the zone here because, you know, like you said, he's trying to do the Eddie Van Halen stuff, but he's still tasteful. At this point, all that shit's just thrown out the window, and he's playing very tasteful, very melodic, a lot of attitude. And Eric Singer, man, you know, I love Eric Carr. I kind of wish Eric Carr would have lived to be on Revenge, because I think Eric Carr deserved another really cool album to go crazy on. But, you know, that's just life. It's the way it happened. Unfortunately, he passed away. But Eric Singer, man, he was on fire. I mean, he brought some, and you saw that tour. I mean, he really brought some energy to those songs again. And
he was incredible. He was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I like that one. So I know it's not perfect. There's some songs that aren't incredible, but I think the spirit is what I like about it. And like I said, and key songs, and I think it's got some of their best video. I think Unholy is one of their best videos. I mean, just that dark imagery, it's so cool, man. I just felt like Kiss is back, and it was the perfect timing. Kiss couldn't have done the Asylum thing in 1992. They had to, once again, and you could rationalize that Kiss is following trends. Kiss isn't stupid. They knew like Metallica and all this stuff was out, Pantera. Kiss can't be Metallica and Pantera, but they can be a heavier version of themselves. So I just think the whole thing works for the time and for what the band had gone through previously. I love it, man. I can't help it.
Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head again with it was like Crazy Nights was a calculated move to kind of do a Bon Jovi album. This was a totally calculated move as well, kind of, because they saw what was going on and with all the grunge stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, they totally kind of, this was thought out, long before they did it,
Yep.
But this tour, like I said, I mean, the set list during this tour was great as well. This was, it was up there, not quite as good as the Hot in the Shade set list, but it was still pretty cool. They were still playing a lot of kind of like deep cuts off albums and stuff like that. And they were on fire on this tour. They were just absolutely killing it.
So here's the big final question. We talked about a lot of different players, a lot of different lineups. What's the best lineup of Kiss out of this era?
Oh, it's got to be, for me. It's got to be obviously Paul, Gene, Bruce, and Eric Carr for me. Even though I think Eric Singer is an incredible drummer and probably plays the songs a little bit, I don't know. Eric Carr definitely played everything a little bit too fast.
Yeah.
But I guess that was something, again, it's in Paul's book, that it was kind of, it wasn't just that he played fast. It was they actually discussed how, they kind of seemed to think that if you play the songs faster, it makes them sound heavier. Which kind of is a little bit silly, really, but it was kind of an actual, it was thought out, it was rehearsed that the songs would all be sped up a lot. So I think at times Eric plays a little bit too fast, but I think just his character as well. Mm-hmm. It just seemed like such a, so devoted to his fans, and he seemed, out of all the Kiss members, he seemed to be the guy that loved being in Kiss more than anybody else. When you think of how Vinnie Vincent was in Kiss, and the players that have come and gone, Eric Carr seemed to be the one that, I don't know, his heart seemed to be in it more than any other member of Kiss for me. So yeah, I would go with that lineup. Yep. I'm taking it you're going to go with the Revenge lineup.
No. I agree with you 100%. That is the best non-makeup lineup for sure. Those were the guys that just fit the best, and I think overall just had the best overall output, had the most output. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. That was Kiss to me. That was the first Kiss that I ever was exposed to musically. So, man, I'm right with you.
Yeah, to me, there's 70s Kiss with Ace and Peter, and then there's 80s Kiss with Eric Carr and Bruce, and that's, to me, that they're the only two lineups for me, really.
Awesome, man. Well, we got through them all. I think for the most part we're on the same wavelength, maybe just for those two albums, but even probably on those we could see the pros and we could see the pros and cons of all of them. So
I got in. I'll just give you my top six again. So I came in at Crazy Nights was number 1, number 2 Asylum, number 3 Hot in the Shade, number 4 Animalized, number 5 Lick It Up, and number 6 Revenge.
Okay.
So what was yours?
Revenge was 1, Asylum 2, Hot in the Shade 3, Lick It Up 4, Animalized 5, Crazy Nights 6. So a lot of ours were right on target with each other.
Yeah, very similar. We've got good taste, Mike.
That's we definitely do, man. Well, hey, this was a blast. I really appreciated talking Kiss with you. Like I said, 80s Kiss doesn't get enough love, I think, from people in general. And like I said, there's so many great songs and tours and looks. So much to talk about on it, for sure.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, thanks for having me on your show, man. It's been a lot of fun, and I always love talking about Kiss, so it's been great. Thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, man, and lots of luck with Midnite City in 2021.
Yeah, look out for it.
All right, Rob. Take care, man. Have a good day.
Cheers, Mike.
Well, that was a fun episode with Rob. Remember, you can subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode, and you can listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Rock on!